Welcome to Digitalk, a marketing podcast where we uncover everything you need to know about our industry and how you can make it work for your business. My name is Simon Curtis. I am the founder of Curtis Gabriel, a full-service digital marketing agency where we're all about adding value in everything that we do. And that's the aim of this podcast. In our first episode, we're going to take things right back to the beginning of our business, just so you can get an idea of who we are and where we're at. I'll be having a conversation with my business partner, Roger Gabriel, and I can confirm it's a story like no other. Hi mate, so CG has decided to do a podcast and you and I have been assigned to be the guinea pigs for this. So thank you for coming today. How you doing?
I'm very well, buddy. Very well. You alright?
Yeah, not bad. Full of busy as always. It's always nice to come up to the office, you know. So and interested to see how this plays out. So the idea behind it is that we do a diverse range of digital marketing across the planet, and podcasts are a really good way of getting the message out there. So here we are, basically, and colleagues wanted us to start by talking about the CG story, which is, I think, quite an interesting one.
Certainly is. Quite raw.
Yes. So, I mean, believe it or not, CG is actually a decade old. If you remember, when we reconnected, I was trading as SR Curtis Limited, which I incorporated over a decade ago, which is quite surreal to think where's the last 10 years gone, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I do think that there'll be a lot of value added with this podcast for digital marketeers, and also people looking to start an agency as well. In many respects, I don't think our story will be too different, but I think, you know, if we lift the hood up and talk about the CG curse, you know, all the way through to the late nights and stuff like that, I think it'll be quite insightful, as well as, you know, in time as we do more episodes here talking about delivery we've done for clients, and so on. So yeah, I think there's no better place to start than us. So, you know, thanks for coming on. I am going to be the one that will be consistently on this. Hopefully I will up my hosting game in time. It's actually quite funny because you listen to podcasts and you think, oh god, these hosts do talk a lot of shit, but I kind of think you have to, don't you?
That's it. I mean, you know, we should start at the beginning, really, shouldn't we?
Yeah. So I guess it starts when we both went to Northumbria and respectively both decided to get into club promo.
Yeah, and I think without wanting to bore people with that too much, I think sort of the relevance and to the marketing, especially the digital side, and the time that we did that is probably the important bit. And you know, obviously, when was that? It was sort of mid 2000s, was it?
Yeah, because you started whilst you were still at uni, because you are a couple of years younger than me. I had just finished uni, and you had Newcastle University on lockdown, the posh kids.
Yeah.
And I had the Northumbria.
But I actually went to Northumbria, obviously, as you know, and right at the beginning, you know, the younger ones won't remember, but Facebook wasn't open to everyone, and it was sort of, when it came to the UK, it was red bricks only. So, you know, Newcastle got Facebook before Northumbria.
Yeah, massively.
So, you know, from my point of view, I had to, you know, when we started using that for the groups and starting to create the events and things like that, obviously had to use Newcastle students in order to start harnessing that. So, you know, that's a long time ago, but that's kind of where this whole story of social media started for me, and obviously for you, probably not too long afterwards.
Well, it's interesting because the Monday night that I ran at Tiger, which had like 2,000 students every week, we had to top it up with Newcastle kids. So we actually were using Facebook to tap the Newcastle kids. Then quite quickly Northumbria was given it. But I think what's interesting there is that you and I commercially use social media right from the beginning, which I don't think there's many people that can say. So while sometimes I reflect on how CG has become a social media agency and think, it was all chance, I do think that grounding that we had, and the fact that we've been using social media literally since, or Facebook, because I remember using Bebo.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the Poly kids were on Bebo. So we were using Bebo right back. We're talking 15, 14, 13 years ago.
And the relevance for me is sort of basically nights out are a social event, social media, social networking, and so it was that transition of guerrilla marketing, networking, face to face, transitioning to online. So it was literally trying to replicate what we were doing more effectively, making savings. Basically reaching our audience faster, better. Which is exactly
what it did, and it's a great analogy for traditional versus digital, because what we had to do before that was, you used to print 5,000, 10,000 flyers and pepper them around the streets, the halls, and so on. That was incredibly labour intensive, and also, you couldn't be malleable, you couldn't, versatile. Once you printed them, whereas with social, you could put different messages out. But it was all groups back then, right at the beginning. This was a time when Facebook pages did not exist. Yeah. That pages did exist, but around the time that Zuckerberg did his IPO, and then he went, shit, I need to monetize this. So he then created business pages. Guys, like some people that get into digital and get into social media won't even be able to imagine a world where business pages, ad manager didn't exist, but they didn't. Facebook ads weren't around when we first started pushing social media via CG. Right at the beginning, ads didn't exist. But yeah, so that's our background, and we obviously met through that. Because we weren't competitors, because we were going after completely different markets. But we both had a natural distrust and, dare I say, dislike for the promoters. So we knew each other, but we didn't. But that was it.
Yeah, and then a few years later, when was that? 2012? It must have been 2012.
2012.
Yeah.
We both got married. You got married to Carmen, I got married to Lucy, and we both decided we needed to grow up a bit. You'd been out the promo game for a couple of years longer than I had, and anyway, we were dragged along to baby class to NCT, weren't we? And I don't know if we've ever talked about this. I could not have been more reluctant to go when I first went there. I don't know how you felt. I kind of went because Lucy wanted to.
You know what? Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not really interested at the time. I can't remember what we learned. I think nothing can really prepare you ultimately for kids and the chaos. So, probably would advise it's not the worst thing in the world to do, but also, I don't know if everyone else was as reluctant as us. I think they probably weren't, to be fair to them.
Yeah, I think a lot of
they're probably a lot more excited. Yeah, I know. So we're quite similar like that. But anyway, some good came of it, didn't it? Really. So even if it wasn't changing nappies and doing other things.
Do you remember? I mean, we learned we learnt a lot about a natural birth, which definitely didn't fucking happen for either of us. But you know, it was a good opportunity to meet other people that were going through the same thing. And I actually think you and I going through becoming parents for the first time, you know, did really help as much as it
as you
hindered
said before,
in a way.
you know, growing up, it was time to change, and obviously, you know, after those classes, we sort of went for a drink at the pub, and that's where it all really sort of started. You know, you were sort of, I think you had a few things going on at the time. You had a few different roles.
I had too much going on, and you know, we became really good mates by that point, and I respected what you had to say, and you know, I was literally going, I don't know how I can service all this, because all I was doing was consulting for and I was working on the Ashes with the cricket club. I was doing some stuff with Newcastle United, with the Falcons, the Eagles, Fluid Group, Nova, you know, blooming Matthew was getting me to do stuff for Benfield, and you know, and I sat with you going, you know I'm not going to have as much time on my hands as I used to, you know, with the baby on the way, and you, I guess, made some life-changing advice, which was, you know, grow value through staff. I'll never forget it. You know, that is what you said, mate.
Yeah, if only I knew what we were in for. No. I mean, from my point of view, I just remember this guy who was just sort of, you know, as you say, doing lots of things, consultancy, which is nice. You're independent, you've got your life, you can sort of dip in and out. Not that you would dip out much, but as in you could move. And obviously, everyone you were working with had some, you know, some real sort of interesting backgrounds, and there were sizable people, you know, for the Northeast. That was not normal to be involved in so many things, but obviously on the other side you could tell, well, you know, clearly he's the guy that's doing it all, and it's not sustainable long term, and you know, here's an opportunity really to take all these contacts and the network you built and the relationships that you'd sort of developed, and try and turn that into a sort of a large scale independent business, which led us down, you know, down the initial route of marketing. Obviously, I had a sort of marketing business before, which I got out of, and you'd sort of obviously done all these sort of consultancy roles, and it just made sense to build an agency. So you know, off we went.
Literally 8 weeks before the kids were. Do you remember? I remember Charles Penn from Sinton's. It's a law firm big law firm in Newcastle, literally saying to us, "You guys are nuts. If you make it, if you make it, given the time of your lives, then you know, fair play to you."
I think since then it seems to be a natural thing that people tend to get extremely busy around the time when their kids are coming. It's just nature's way.
I mean, there is an argument to say that you and I both didn't have an office, so we wanted somewhere to escape. But I mean, that would be the cynics amongst people would infer that. I don't know. I'm not going to confirm nor deny that. But I do think it was the right time, and then
not that we had much of an office.
No, we had a kitchen in a gym. Do you remember not being able to go to the loo between sessions?
Yeah, I mean, hilarious for you and I, obviously. For our first employee, probably less so. Who sat in that kitchen with us?
Well, we had 3 at one point, because we...
Did it go to 3 in there, did it?
Well, we had Joanne, and then we appointed Sherry when we started winning more design work. Because I think it's worth noting that we didn't start off as a social media agency. We were going to be full service, and because that's our background. And I think it's interesting, because I remember a couple of people saying, you will need to specialise in something to grow, but we didn't know what that was. We were doing a bit of web, we were doing a bit of SEO. I was still involved in supporting sponsorship activation and sales. Like, we're doing all sorts. But the first proper client that we won was Start Fitness, which was it's a big global, sports e-commerce brand, and we had to hire a second designer. So we had Joanne and Sherry in the office, and then they were, that was at least six months in that place.
Yeah, I think I can't really remember, but I'm sure we kind of said, well, let's just open full service and see where it takes us. Which, looking back, is a really sort of mature thing to do. Really, a lot of people would say, oh, I'm good at this, I'm going to focus on that, and it just seems weird to look back and think that's actually what we did. Listen, we're both good at marketing, we've both got marketing backgrounds. Let's just set up and see where it takes us. Give it some time, and then and then focus. Which in the end is actually exactly what happened. And as anyone who's ever set up a business knows, that's very rarely the case where you sort of set out with a plan, even though it's sort of a wide open plan like that, and actually turns out to be reality. So that was good. Yeah. So Start Fitness. We did lots of events with, who else were we working with at the time?
I mean, we did a full redesign for Newcastle Eagles, which was really I felt quite proud to kind of go to a game and see the full set of branding across so many assets, from huge kind of media boards all the way down to VIP passes. We did some stuff for Apartment Group, which is a big North East leisure company. We were still doing stuff for Novus Leisure. We did all sorts, but I guess the one to really talk about that changed everything was LA Taxis.
Yeah, I remember.
Do you remember me ringing you?
Yeah,
because I went, I think we're going to lose this client because my contact has been sacked. And you went, just go and see what you can do. And they actually asked me in to say that Steve had been let go. Can I show them how to run their Facebook and Twitter? We were only running their web at the time, and their SEO. And I went, okay. And I'll never forget it, because within 30 seconds of me trying to explain it to them, they were just like, I don't have a fucking clue what you're saying. Can you run it for us? And, being an entrepreneur, I was like, yeah. And they were like, how much? And I said, well, I'll have to come back to you. And I remember you and I talking and identifying two, one thing was, let's try and push for good money. But secondly, this could be, I think by that point, going back to the point that we were trying to look for a recurring revenue model, weren't we?
That was, definitely. I think having done a few large one-off marketing gigs, as it were, and jobs and projects, it became pretty evident that some sort of recurring model, some sort of specialisation, as opposed to sort of focusing, solely on one project for a period of time, with a client, the whole sales and sign-up process, and then through to sort of completion of project, it didn't feel like there was going to be much continuity or growth there. And I think so we did know that we wanted something.
Yeah. No, we did. We said we didn't want to be hand to mouth, and I looked at it going, it's as much work to make a sale for a one-off product than it is a reoccurring product. And we knew that SEO wasn't where we wanted to go, because that was quite a saturated market.
It's crowded, and so was design, obviously.
And not particularly profitable, the design wasn't. So, yeah, this came along, and we offered a price point that they said okay to.
And what was that?
Social media, CG's social media product was born, and we had a dozen clients by that point, and I actually sold it into them, and about half of them bit. But we were still in the back high street then. We're still in that kitchen, and we outsourced it for a while. But he was, he was he wanted to do it his way. So we hired somebody who lasted a day. Do you remember? Her name was Rosie.
Oh, well remembered, yeah.
Because she walked in her high heels into the gym. Because I'd never because we didn't dare show the office. Like, I interviewed her in a Cafe Nero.
We used to do all our interviews in Nero, yeah.
And she came in and she lasted 2 days. And then we did the only sensible thing that we could. We gave it to my wife, who was on mat leave.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
We still owe her for that. We never paid her. One day we'll have to give us some cash for that, dearie me. But what was good, jokes aside, the thing that did is that allowed me to stay really close to it, to learn the product. And then if you look over the next 6 months, that product really evolved. We gave up the design retainers so that
I remember that decision.
the designers could work on.
Exactly, absolutely. Prioritising sort of good income over the future, and I guess that's that's a big one. We believed in it, and we had to make some sacrifices even at that stage of sort of design revenue to say, listen, we're going to really give this a shot.
Yeah, we did, and that was brave. But even going right, we're going to focus on social. You always used to talk about owned media, and social wasn't, and we had to convince people back then that what they could achieve from it. And at best, it was a token gesture for most businesses. You look at it now and go, especially post-pandemic, social media is, a huge part of digital, and digital is pretty much where a full marketing budget is going to. But all those years ago, that wasn't the case. So I had to do an educational sale rather than just a transactional one.
Yeah, that's it. I think, we got there possibly too early, but also, meant that we were able to sort of develop the product, so by the time the market was right, pandemic, and even, probably before the pandemic, things that the market had sort of changed and was, so yes, possibly a bit too early, and the early sales were difficult, but then that's given us, a great position where we are now.
Yeah.
And obviously,
Agreed.
Still really struggle to find a professional competitor. When you look around, it's just crazy. While I'm on that, I guess, I think maybe one of my reservations or our reservations or just general sort of plain obvious is probably the low barriers to entry of the market. But, and that certainly was the case in the early days, and you had to justify that.
Yeah.
But, as the platforms have developed, as the media's developed, as the market has grown, it really has become quite a sort of niche space, highly specialised.
Technical, and you're right. And what we did at the beginning to try and combat that low barrier to entry, because you did talk about that a lot, and I agreed with you, is we tried to do more and go, a one-man band can't do this. Because by this point, we'd moved to Causey Street. We had, half dozen staff at least. And all I had as a competitor, there was a company in London and there's a company in Brighton, Giraffe Social and then Born Social, and then Curtis Gabriel, right? Who didn't have a social in the title, which, I still stand by our decision to go with a more traditional name. But we hardly had any competitors of substance. But one-man bands would come in and go and undercut us.
Yeah.
But we offered all the design that we talked about. We offered, somebody was available 9 to 5. But then we also started doing the out-of-hours stuff, which I did. I mean, to look back and think that, I ran for over a year. I ran the 20 odd accounts, and that's 20 Facebooks, Twitters, because Instagram didn't even exist back then, thank God. It was a huge amount of work, but again, it allowed me to learn crisis management and deal with stuff that now, if something happens to one of our kind of 300 clients, whilst there's no textbook that I can write, I instinctively know what to do. It's interesting.
It's really interesting talking about it now. I haven't really thought about it before, but how we had to tackle the competition, and obviously, as you say, these one-man bands were sort of undercutting us for price, and we just had to invest in our product more and more and more. That's what we had to do. We had to throw costs at it.
Which was actually the right thing to do, but we probably didn't realise that at the time.
Didn't realise that, because you don't know how the story's going to play out, but looking back, it's that was our sort of defence, and and then we obviously the business sort of kept progressing and kept growing, and obviously that just became part of our service. But I guess it's the nature of competition, really. You there's a threat there, and you have to improve or lose.
And we've always done that, and we both weren't afraid of reinvesting. We could have taken more money, we could have done more ourselves. But we didn't. We always reinvested. I mean, I remember thinking to myself, one day we will be able to take more clients on and not have to hire more staff, but I'd say that's only happened recently.
Yeah, and the truth, I think the truth is that's maybe, look again, sort of this retrospective look is, that you kind of have to do that, and that's the cost of growth and improvement is just, adding to your service, adding to your product.
But you always said right at the beginning, mate, that you've got this great lifestyle, because I was earning good money. I was earning as much then as I am now. But you said you're not growing any value. And I kind of...
That's it.
You know me, I do listen to people I respect. And I said, and I kind of... I took that and said, if we are going to do this, we're going to do it properly, and we will look at the value, growing value long term, right? So that's sort of how we went. But I think if you look at milestones, I think the LA taxis one was one. I then think moving from the back High Street to Causey Street, because do you remember it's funny how that office, me and you had one half of it to ourselves.
I don't want to talk about it, Simon. It's still too painful.
Do you remember staying up all night to build the desks because we couldn't afford?
I remember we couldn't even take our coats off in there. We'd come to work in a coat, we'd sit in a coat all day and leave in a coat. It was just that cold. I mean, it was horrific.
That warehouse.
We'll just say that it was tough times, and we did the legwork.
We did, and then we went to Causey Street because it just took longer than we thought to get there, and we'd moved out, and
that was a nice moment though. I mean, whose office was that before we took it over?
It was
one of the local mates.
Accents, Mike Grahamslaw's, and and we obviously, it took longer because we had to. We ended up subletting it from Coastal Retreats, if you remember.
Yeah.
But that was great. But it was massive, and then it's funny that it didn't take long actually for us to end up. There was one point when the meeting room that people were interviewed in Causey Street, by the time they came in, that was their office. When we moved design into the.
Well, I remember when I sort of sketched out that office, obviously our office and a ping pong table, and that was always sort of, one of the big goals. And unfortunately, that ping pong table, I don't even know if it made it there. It didn't. We never made it there.
It didn't, and it didn't last that long in Bullman House where we are now, unfortunately.
Well, that's it. So from that office, we went from, how many were there on day one? I think there was 5 of us,
including
5
us.
Or 6. Yeah.
Six. There was 4 in one side.
Yeah.
Me and you in the other, and then we had the meeting room.
Yeah. And by the time we left,
30
people.
28, I think. Something like that.
Spilling everywhere. It was horrific.
It just wasn't fit for purpose. Like, you look back and you think, and there's there are at least half a dozen staff that are still with us now that were at more than that that were at Causey Street, and
well, that's
fair play to them.
It keeps the story alive, doesn't it? Yeah. But I mean,
it really does.
So that was, I mean, what dates are we talking? Causey Street.
So we've been at Bullman House for nearly 3 years. So sort of.
We've been here 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. and history repeats itself because we're full again.
We're full again. I mean, slightly for different reasons because working's changed and we need more breakout rooms and pods for video conferencing, etc. But we also it's just the right time. It's the right time to invest in better space again. And
I'll be cementing the ping pong table into the floor in the new place.
Yeah, you'll have to, mate.
It'll
if
be
that's gonna
unmovable.
But the office has always been a milestone. But I think there's actually a couple of other milestones to reflect on. I think, if not the biggest milestone, was. So we were working with Hotel Indigo. We were running their social, and their marketing director, Caroline, that's the marketing director of the management company, liked what she saw, and she invited me down to Birmingham. And I didn't know what it was about, but I just decided to prep and did a full appraisal of every single hotel in their portfolio.
I remember that spreadsheet.
And then broke it down into different packages.
Yeah.
And she said that she was impressed by it, and she said, "Look, I'll give you the work." And I keep in touch with her. And I asked her, I said, "Why did you choose that?" And she said, "You wanted it. You were passionate, and we needed it. We knew. Certainly, I knew. I don't know if we ever talked about this. That we needed the Northeast alone would not sustain our ambitions." But we hadn't got anything at that point outside of the Northeast, and winning that contract, and we ended up with clients from Southampton to Edinburgh, allowed us to put a structure together that transcended geography, take the learnings of how we infiltrated a different community digitally. And had a structure that worked for that, and I think had we not won that account, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. Geographical boundaries and being able to break free was a huge step for the business. Again, looking at competitors in London and things, they struggle with how it works elsewhere, and having to adapt to that. Obviously we took that contract on, having to adapt to it, but also using it as part of our marketing sort of spiel, I guess, to other clients, and basically just having that presence, across the UK, just open things up completely for us, really.
Yeah, and the best practice that we had, I think, as much as the examples, it was actually the learnings that I think was incredibly important. But I was still reticent. I still felt that we wouldn't be able to do it in transportation, so we still had LA taxis, and we were doing such a good job. And I think the next turning point was actually an old uni friend of mine spoke to a taxi dispatch company to James, who obviously works for us now. And we ended up with a taxi firm in Birmingham and one in Portsmouth. And I was less confident. I knew that we could deliver for the hotels because it was the same brand, so it was quite turnkey. But I felt that we did a great job there. And Starcars and Aquacars are still our clients today and paying us good money. And we deliver a lot of services for them. But that was the next changing, because it was a second vertical.
It was, and things have changed a lot, but then maybe not changed so much. I think, when you think about that market, you think, it was obviously a very classical, there's a classic image to a taxi company, isn't there? Sort of, cigarettes and waiting rooms and sort of people manning the phone. And obviously, massive disruptor in Uber, and it's still the case now, but a huge sort of digitization of a really sort of traditional industry. And the timing was right, our product was right, and they were sort of able to afford to spend on marketing, and so it was a huge turning point. I can't remember the dates exactly, but we were working, it went fast, didn't it? It went fast.
It went really fast. So we were we were working with Sidecast at the time. I remember getting a call. I was in London, working out of one of the Staybridge suites just south of the river. It was snowing outside. I was outside talking, negotiating the terms. I still remember it today. I reckon that was 2017. So, no, maybe even 16. It was 4 or 5 years ago. Things had moved on by then. Ads were a thing. And we learned quickly what they needed. They needed drivers. They needed hyper local marketing. All things that social could do. And what had changed is, rather than just doing the occasional bit of ROI, we were able to go, right, if this is what you need, this is how we do it. And that was a big change. And I think there's a change within the industry, and it's shit like that weaned out the the one-man bands. But it did breathe more social agencies that did it properly. But I welcome competition. Competition's good. And obviously it's nice because we're kind of a leader. But that was a real turning point, and it went crazy. We ended up with at one point we had nearly 100 taxi firms in a year, and that was the growth. That's how we ended up having to move. That's the reason we had to move out of Causey Street, was because we had so many of those clients. And we, with hospitality, we were desperate to find another management company, another interstate, and we got it with Sidecast for a while. And then they brought that lunatic marketing director in, who looked like Mary.
Not listening.
Who looked like Mary Poppins, who didn't know what agreed to do one thing, then used that as a justification for trying to get rid of us. I'm not bitter about that, honestly, but it's funny because we still do work with some of their hotels now, which is great. But it wasn't really working out. We had a few additional hotels, and I love hospitality, but it's hospitality hotels. A lot of them do have enough resource to do it in house. So whereas transportation firms, and what we tried to do at that point was find what I call kind of big little businesses. So not a huge business that has a marketing department, but ones that still make good money, which taxi and hotels were. So we've always done okay in hospitality. We also did some stuff with Shiva, which unfortunately we had to call it a day when the pandemic hit. But then we've got the stuff with Hilton,
We did, and at that point we were sort of, I think, starting to tease out into Europe a little bit, but Europe, well, not that Europe wasn't enough, it's a different beast, isn't it? But the US came calling, didn't it, Si?
It did. And I still laugh to this day because, I genuinely don't think that you guys... I think, be honest with me, I think you just felt I wanted a trip to Vegas.
I'll be honest with you, I still think you do, yeah. No, it's there's no doubt it was just super exciting. There's no way to keep, when you decide to take a business to the United States of America and, go down that path, there's no way you can't be excited about it. It's huge, and it's, I think, every person's dream to establish a business, and maybe not everybody's dream, but it is a dream. It's a scenario which is just doesn't happen to that many people, to be able to launch a business in the US. And so there's no doubt that it's hugely exciting, and that can distract, but you weren't there. You were focused, as you always have been. As we saw, the very first day in the pub when you started, the way you were talking about your clients and what you wanted to do, it was obvious, clear and obvious, that that you were going to go there to do a job and not mess about, however exciting it is.
Yeah.
There's just no doubt about that.
And it would have been easy to look at it and go, he was on a jolly. I mean, I ended
But
up...
this is your jolly. That is your jolly. Selling your business is your jolly.
Because it's my passion.
Exactly.
But I ended up at a party in a mansion with Mike Tyson at that show, because I went to a show in Vegas, but it was the way that I had grew this business. Go to shows, identify the movers and shakers, get to know them, build a relationship and understanding, and go. I think what was interesting is I was more successful at that show than I thought I was going to be, because I remember going and being really, really nervous, because I thought, you look at the US back then, because it had always been an ambition of mine, and I looked at the US and thought, God, you think Silicon Valley, Wall Street and Hollywood, and the brand of the US is very intimidating, and I thought these guys are just going to be so advanced compared to the UK. And I went to this show and I was like, ended up shitting myself, but for a different reason. I was like, they're not going to understand this. And it wasn't just the industry, because it's the same. And anybody that knows marketing knows that actually the UK is more advanced than the US when it comes to digital. But that ended up being an opportunity. I found the right people. I met the right people. I went out and drinking with them and doing what we've done over the years with people, and
having a good time. But having a good time means coming home with the bacon, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Otherwise it's not a good time.
But I did come home with the bacon, but I needed to go out and see people again, just to get stuff over the line. And I remember everybody being, the other board members being a little reticent about that.
Well, at this time we'd taken a decision, and obviously we'd taken on investment from third party for the first time, because I think we'd gone under our own steam from day one, and obviously, but at this point we decided to bring other people on board and taking on extra investment and invest that in growth, and suddenly it becomes a little, when you're spending your own income, it's that's your own sort of, you've earned that and you can spend it. When you're borrowing or in order to do it, it's a slightly different kettle of fish. So and obviously the costs involved with going transatlantic
were high.
Regularly, and the acquisition cost, for the first client is probably 3 trips, and if you think, how long's one social media retainer gonna take back? But obviously, things you have to get your first client, and unfortunately things have snowballed since then. So
it was expensive though. There's no two ways about it. But so now the US and the UK as two P&Ls are equally successful, I guess. But it's really interesting reflecting on it, because the story goes that by this point Matthew had invested, so Matthew Squires.
So Matthew, I would say, just to rewind, Matthew allowed us to invest and grow nationally. I think that was kind of that time, 2016, 2017.
That was before, because we opened the office in London. We sent we sent one of our own down, who just used our money to move down there. Thanks, Catherine. I still keep in touch with her, so But having that presence in London, and it's interesting because at the time we didn't have a big enough reputation for anyone in London to take us seriously, so we kind of had to have a London office. We don't now. It's really interesting that no one gives a shit, and I don't know whether that's times have changed or the fact that CG has an international reputation. That's probably a bit of both. But Matthew did allow us to do that, and I think it was a great. It also gave us some good PR. Benfield is a big Northeast success story. And he was a good fit for us. He came in, and it was another part of that journey, but it did give us that national presence, not just via interstate, because that's when we won. On the back of that, that's when we won. We won SciCast, we won Shiva, we won ultimately Taste of Hilton, which is now, our most, that gives us a presence in, Europe, Middle East and Africa, working directly with some really impressive people within hospitality. But that came from Matthew. But then, obviously, I guess what we haven't done is talked about any of the personal stuff that went on at the same time, and we didn't have it easy between. We won't go into details, but both of us suffered some pretty tough shit during those years. I mean, we used to call it the CG curse. I mean, with these lights on, I can see the scar on your forehead, mate. Like,
I noticed that earlier, actually.
But you fell off a 2-story building.
Yeah, that was good, wasn't it?
We both had stuff going on with the kids, parents.
Yeah.
The list could goes on. I don't want to make this morbid, but it
was tough times.
And
it was tough times, but out of tough times, came decision to, how do you want to call it? Professionalize a little bit as well the business. Bring in some experience that we didn't have. We
are entrepreneurs,
exactly.
And not corporate boss
experience.
I don't want to call
So we brought in a corporate boss.
We did, which was Martin, who is our CEO. It's probably not a traditional CEO post, but he got it, and
Yeah, his background was an FD in a local company, listed company. Really fantastic experience, and just absolutely required, I think, to sort of help us grow. So I stepped down from that role, or stepped aside, and you and him work, obviously very closely together, and through that we were able to sort of tidy the business up, package it up a bit more neatly, and get some investment in that stage.
And put the structures in place. So, the HR function, the finance function, all these things. But you'd never worked full time on CG, but he did. And what that allowed me to do is not deal with some of the stuff that I was dealing with and go out and sell full time, which did contribute to the growth.
I thought you were going to talk about our previous HR policies and structures to keep it light. Yeah, no, maybe we shouldn't go there.
I don't know, mate. I think it's...
essentially, you got two guys, busy guys trying to run an entire business and finding their way. Suddenly we had 30 people, 25...
And we'd never done... you're absolutely right. And the thing is, what people don't realise is there is always a lag. You get somewhere, then you have to catch up.
Yeah.
And the fact is that we had to deal with HR function our HR function was me chatting to my sister-in-law who was in HR for advice, and it is really difficult, and you could one wrong move, especially in these days, you can. So it's hard. I think being an entrepreneur and managing growth, and that whole piece can be covered under, because it wasn't just HR function, it was how we were doing finance and everything. It's like managing growth. It's actually almost easier to run a business that isn't doing that well than running a business that was having double-digit growth every month.
Exactly. I think that lag point is spot on. We've grown in spurts over the years, and some areas were left behind, and anyway, so we rectified that. So
and you did, and it was the right call. I remember you saying, "Look, I think we should do this." We nearly didn't do it because I'm very selective with who I work with, and Martin is so polar opposite to me. It was nearly too much, but something deep down felt right, and we almost did a dance beforehand that allowed us to sort of understand each other, where we're gonna fit, and so on, and it's worked. We wouldn't be here without that. We wouldn't be here without all the things we've talked about. They're all the recipe to the success we're now enjoying. But Martin coming in and doing that, and allowed me to focus more on biz dev at the time and travel the UK selling taxi clients and hospitality.
The less glamorous side.
Yeah,
less shared on LinkedIn, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. But we did go into Europe as well. I think it's important to say that we did a deal with IHG. We were looking after IHG's lifestyle brand, so we ended up running, doing stuff in Hotel Indigo Berlin, Hotel Indigo Paris in the fashion district. We had the clients in Jersey. We did branch out, and that was a big moment for us because we were able to handle other language and handle international, and that's what gave me the confidence to go to the US. And we went to the US and it worked, and we ended up, now we've got 50 clients over there in everything from a concrete foundation company in Texas to a charity that looks after special forces, luxury transportation, hospitality clients, a printing company. We have the same business we have in the UK, in the US now, which I guess I've never really reflected on, and it's like, bloody hell, that's, it's great. It's something to look back to.
There's clearly, there's clearly a demand, so long may it last, really, and as long as people need good social, we'll be there for them. So that's brilliant. I think we should probably start to wrap things up. We've been here a nice little while.
It's been really good to reminisce, mate. I think.
Well, in all fairness, we did this not so long ago on a phone call, so I think this we've sort of selected the bits that we can handle, but some of the stuff was really painful.
Yeah, I think, we'll save them for the memoirs.
Some of our early clients and what we had to do in order to keep this thing going. We won't bore you with those, but safe to say it wasn't all plain sailing, glitz and glamour.
No, it wasn't. For business class flights to Australia and and so forth. But nor is any business, and I think. It's important if anyone has listened to all of this and they're starting a business. I always try and tell people about the shitty times, because businesses that make it, most businesses fail. Let's not forget that. And businesses that make it, it's so easy to talk about the glitz and glam, but that's not what. It's the same with kids. I don't talk about to people. I don't talk about the nice stuff. I talk about how fucking hard it is, because people need to know, and business is hard and sacrifice and dark days. I mean, because we've done well now, I've got I bought a picture for my office at home, which is an iceberg, and on the top it has success, and it lists all the things underneath it that, rejection and late nights, early mornings, all that shit, and just to remind me, because you do need to, I'd advise anybody to have a go. If they've got their own business, you should always have a go, but you need to go in with your eyes open. So I think it's important that, we don't need to go into all that shitty detail, but, there were some very, very difficult moments and difficult times, but, on speaking about difficult times, the pandemic, I think we can't wrap up without just giving a nod to that. And I think the duplicity of the pandemic for Curtis Gabriel has been fascinating. So on the one hand, most of our clients back in March 2020, ceased trading. We reduced packages, we made use of furlough. But then the flip side was, the digitalisation of everyday consumer behaviour. It stuck a knife in traditional marketing, in my opinion. And we're sat here with, one of, the biggest, social media agencies in the UK, a global company. And we've done, we've kind of, it has accelerated some of our growth. Which if you talked to me this time last year when I was working, 18-hour days, 7 days a week to save the business because we didn't have any bloody clients left, I would never have thought, it's been a fascinating 12 months.
Mad year. But as we sort of, I guess, moving out of that, fingers crossed, these last few days. Any what are your thoughts? What are the plans? What the movements?
Well, basically, right now we are welcoming clients back that we've been on reduced packages or suspended contracts. So we're enjoying that. But we're also finding a lot of companies that use traditional marketing for lead generation are now moving over to us because of our ability to really look at data. And you know how you talked about at the beginning how to do it properly isn't just about the fluffy stuff, the creative and the messaging and doing great reels on Instagram and so on. It's about the links between web and social and how email can fit into that and traffic, but then measuring success, split testing, A/B testing, but then how clever can you be with the data journey and building custom audiences on Facebook based on different landing pages and then reverse engineering data so clients can understand it more and everything to do with that. And that's been something that we've always been able to do but no one's been really interested in, and in the last few months it is something that a lot of people are really getting interested in. You know the Great Hack, the Netflix series, when Cambridge Analytica, now they did something completely unethical, which was they built custom audiences but unethically, because people were just filling in what they thought was like a questionnaire, like what kind of bird are you, by filling stuff in. They were actually profiling people and then identifying from the profile and building a custom audience of people that they felt that they could sway to win an election in specific swing states and areas. We don't obviously do any of that, but what we can do is send traffic to run specific ads to specific people and send traffic to landing pages based on different ads will resonate with different populations, or even running ads within a larger custom audience, and then building sub custom audiences, or if they're going on a data journey, if they have, they've filled out half a form and gone away, we can retarget them, or execute a checkout but not actually purchased. You name it. And that ability to be that targeted and understand the data, it's not just about boosting a post to people within a 5-mile radius who are 20 to 30 and hope that some come like it used to be. This is about custom audiences, lookalike audiences, and that for me is the future of marketing.
Yeah, sounds like a natural evolution. It's just the bar keeps moving, and we've got to keep moving with it and be at the front of it.
I mean, how many times have we changed our product?
Yeah.
When massive changes with Facebook, massive changes with Instagram, that we have to make wholesale changes, and it for some people.
Remember, having to convince our first clients to say, listen, the Facebook and has changed. We need to put an ad budget. And trying to squeeze 50 quid out of them. Now, when you approach people, it's almost they know how it works. They know that they need the expertise in order to manage that spend.
We don't get that anymore. It's really interesting. We used to get, well, why do we need to pay for an ad budget when we're paying for you? Now it's like, you need to pay for us so you can actually get decent bang for your buck. Because what I just talked about there, that's scratching the surface of what we can do. We're Facebook accredited. Everybody has passed exams that, we've got paid specialists now that,
Yeah, but also the agency, and this is what we knew from day one, is somebody finds not everything is it's not like Facebook hand out the a roadmap to the perfect post or
No.
It's trial and error, and when you've got 50, 60 people working on this day in, day out, and that information flows, and that's obviously a huge part of the value here.
I would actually argue that Facebook make it quite difficult for you to be able to get value for money from their ads, because if people don't know and have to spend more to get what so they have to offer it, but they don't make it easy, and that's where we one of the many things, and then it almost comes full circle because ads can be optimized by creative, so the two go hand in hand, but there's no two ways about it. This last 12 months, to repeat myself, everyday consumer behaviour has gone online, and that's not going away. I look at 4 big things that have happened in the last 2 decades: social media, smartphones, Wi-Fi, the pandemic, and those 4 things have digitalised the world. So digital marketing is the way. So, and we're just going to keep growing. We're going to keep investing in our team, and looking forward to seeing where things are going.
Definitely.
Hopefully with a new office as well.
Yeah, that's it. Well, probably won't give too much away at this point, but yeah. A few things in the pipeline.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
Exciting times. Good stuff, Si. Listen, that's been good. Nice little trip down memory lane there without too much sadness and
dirty laundry.
Yeah, exactly. We'll save that one for a different podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
Good stuff.
Nice
Alrighty.
one. Thanks very much for coming along, mate. It's good to see you.
Top man. Cheers.
Right, cheers. Bye.